Waitors, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? It wasn't disastrous for the couple as much as it was the restaurant. I used to work at a small southeastern franchise restaurant. It wasn't anything you could mistake for upscale. We had someone call in and ask if we could fry the ring he was planning to propose with in a hush puppy. Extremely weird request. But we said sure. They come in to eat with their families. She gets her order of hush puppies. Doesn't choke on the ring and seems excited enough. Stayed at the table for about 2 hours total and chatted. They dined and dashed. Was a server at a popular seafood chain that isn't very fancy, but when you live in a town like the one I worked in, that sort of place is the nicest place to go for Valentine's Day. Well, the night was incredibly busy when a couple came in. They were upset after waiting 45 minutes for a table. And they were complaining quite a lot. The woman was decked out in a super nice dress and faux coat that was actually very realistic. Well, she was sat and served her frozen drink. She goes to lift the glass to her mouth. And inexplicably, the bottom of the cup simply breaks and the drink is spilled all over her dress and nice coat. Was unfortunate. I saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of the restaurant. The woman stood up, took her ring off, threw it at him and walked out. The man continued his meal, had dessert and then paid the bill. Left a pretty big tip for the inconvenience and left. Someone showing up for a date and you both realize about 30 minutes and she ain't coming. Drinks on me, buddy. Not really a disaster, but this guy came in and said he was waiting for his date. He stayed for 5 hours waiting and she never showed. He eventually ordered 4 for himself and asked that I remove the other glass of water from the table. He said it was their first date. Not a total disaster, but still not good. Had a table of 2 people, probably in their mid-40s last year. Took 45 minutes for this couple to get their entrees due to our kitchen being way too slammed. When they were dropped at the table, they immediately asked for to-go boxes because they told their babysitter they'd be home by a certain time. I overheard the wife say, "Well, I guess this is why we don't celebrate Valentine's Day." The worst part was that they weren't angry. Just very sad. My personal feelings about dining out on Valentine's Day aside, I felt so horrible that this couple clearly had put in an effort to have a nice night with each other only to have it go that way. We comped their meals. BTW. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said, "No, I can't do this," and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, "Let's talk about this later." They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. I got dumped on Valentine's Day last year. I am a waiter. It was like a movie. I was bartending at an Italian restaurant, not a fancy one, but still, and it's pretty much full of Valentine's dates. A guy walks in and sits at the bar by himself, looking pretty down. He asked for a whiskey, so I poured it. Told him it was on the house because he looked like he needed it. He proceeds to tell me his story. He had come to the city to surprise his girlfriend for Valentine's, about a 5-hour bus trip between cities, and he sure surprised her. She was in her dorm room fricking one of his friends from high school. He didn't know what to do, so he just walked into the first place that sold alcohol. I spilled as much whiskey as he wanted and watched the Raptors with him. Never saw him again. It's cliche, but it happened. Edit. Watch the Raptors isn't a euphemism. We watched the basketball game. I was the disaster. I was a new server. And horrible. I dumped an entire tray on the floor. My bad. Nothing too scandalous. But I'd say happy Valentine's Day pretty much to any couple that sat at my tables. Occasionally one of them would say something like, "We're not dating." Some of the times, the other person would give a look that pretty much confirmed that they both had very different interpretations of what was going on. There's an episode of 30 Rock where they mention that going to IKEA is a big stress test in relationships. That has nothing on going to a restaurant on the busiest days of the year. Particularly Mother's Day. And Valentine's, especially when it's on a weekend. I'd say 99% of the disasters I've seen have just been normal run-of-the-mill issues where couples realize they have different levels of patience. And one person undoubtedly gets aggravated with the packed restaurant. And their time is ruined. Not really much of a disaster. But last year my work called me up. Hey buddy. We know you're single. Can you come in as an extra shift tonight? Couples who are close to the spring breakup trying to save everything on one meaningless holiday dinner. You see at least one every year. I worked at a sports bar. Every couple there on Valentine's Day was a divorce waiting to happen. When do the waiters waitresses have their Valentine's night out? Saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of a restaurant. I wasn't their server, but the table was directly in the center of the restaurant and they were certainly loud enough for everyone to hear. My manager kindly asked them to leave and the man's response was to yell, "I've been wanting to do that poop for 2 years now," and stormed out. I set my hair on fire and spilled a full Stella on a lady. I work in a causal fine dining steakhouse. Luckily for me, the lady I spilled the Stella on was super understanding and her husband said from across the table, "Well, now she has to take her pants off." So that could have gone worse for me. Worked at this Japanese restaurant and had one guy comes and orders a bunch of sushi to go. Says he's going to surprise his girlfriend. He comes back like 30 minutes later and asks us if he could return some of the sushi. Apparently his girlfriend has a seafood allergy and couldn't eat anything he ordered and she was mad he spent so much money. So she made him come and try to get some of it back. Obviously we couldn't really give him a refund on the food. But we made him a chicken hibachi on the house so he could have something to take back to her because we felt bad for the guy. Somewhat related, I'm an RN and previously worked in a jail. We offered free STD testing and treatment. Had one guy get the news that he was positive for gonorrhea and chlamydia on Valentine's. How's that for a V-Day? Fortunately he had a good sense of humor about it. For the unaware, these are both fairly treatable diseases. A nice lady brought her kid in for dinner. Got seated at a table next to her husband and his mistress. Just wait till Saturday and this question again. The comments will be even more gold. Just being a waiter on this day is a disaster. It's amateur hour, people who don't normally go out come out. Not only will you get rude, clueless guests, very good chance you get stiffed for the majority of the evening. TLDR, Valentine's Day is arguably the very worst day to work in the service industry. This thread could get sad fast, so I'll give a success story. Was working backline at an Arby's on Valentine's Day. It's 8 o'clock, store's empty. One couple comes and orders their food. I just finished making it when I see the guy get down on his knee and propose with a packet of horsey sauce. She says yes. I tell my manager and give them a free cookie because accepting a proposal done by condiments in and Arby's is true love. Not my story. But a co-worker, which happens to be my cousin, told me this story. One day a guy enters a taco restaurant where we worked at. He was a waiter, so he goes on to bring the menu to the table. The guy, 20-ish, says he's waiting for someone. So he's gonna wait to order a full meal. But as waiters we are taught to insist a little more and sell something. So the guy finally orders the cheapest item on the menu, a small carne asada taco. Just one. A few hours went by. The dude's date still hadn't arrived. And every 20 or so minutes he would order another one of those small tacos. Eventually the owner of the place, who is a really cool dude and has been a friend of my family for years, tells the waiters, "LMAO, look at this poor sucker. If the girl never arrives, I'll pay for everything he has ordered myself. So another hour and a half goes by and this dude finally gives up and asks for the check. He looked pretty sad, so as a waiter of his age, my cousin told him everything he consumed was on the house. He smiled and left good tips anyway. Stay strong guys. If she has you waiting that long, she's probably not worth it anyways. Happened to my poor co-worker. A guy and his date came in for Valentine's Day. They had a great time. Ate a lot of food. Drank a lot of wine. And got along really well with my co-worker who was their server. About 2 months later they come back in and request my co-worker again, who happily says yes to serving them. He goes up and greets them. The guy introduces his wife to him. And my co-worker mentioned something about how much he enjoyed serving them on Valentine's Day. They go quiet. Wife gets up and leaves. Guy just lowers his head. Turns out he had brought his mistress in on Valentine's Day. But my co-worker didn't realize he was with a different woman this time around, so didn't think anything of it. We never saw the guy again. I waited on one of the owners of the restaurant I was working at with his girlfriend and her twin kids. Kinda weird. But probably didn't get a babysitter. He had been dating this woman for a number of months. But it was his first Valentine's Day on a date that wasn't his wife in decades. I don't think he was ready. But he was there to support the business. He broke down crying during dinner and it was heartbreaking. They left early. Not a waiter, but a story worth sharing nonetheless. A friend of mine went on a date with this girl once or twice, and then invited her to a nice Valentine date as well. He had everything set up perfectly. He called her 4 times, texted her several times and waited for too long. Eventually, after finishing half of the wine bottle by himself, smoking a pack of cigarettes and looking like crap from stress, disappointment, being played, sweating and waiting, he went home. The girl said that she had an emergency and she did not receive any of the texts or calls. However, in a photo posted on Instagram during Valentine's Day, she was shown to have gone out to a concert or something like that. Probably with another guy. So she was clearly lying about it. Freaking brutal. Oh Jesus. They're freaking all disasters. In my city, where service industry and tourism are the top industry in town, we consider Valentine's and Mother's Day to be amateur dining night. Every single party thinks they are the most special. They all want extra anything because they want their night to be magical. They do not give a poop that it's literally the busiest night of the year in absolutely every restaurant. How dare you tell me there's an hour-long wait? It's Valentine's Day and we need to be seated. My own. When my GF got sick on the train home, 2 guys tried to sexually harass the 2 of us. Only to get back to her car at 3:30 AM and realize she had no gas. After I managed to drive us home on empty, I saw a note on the dining room table. Apparently, my roommate had been taking the $100 I was giving him each month for rent and using it to pay off his fines and fees from his recent DUI. And hadn't paid the rent for 3 months and we were on the verge of eviction. I waited tables at a Mexican restaurant while I was in college. A couple sitting at a table not in my section. The guy gets down on one knee and proposes with an open black box. The girl said, "Can I see the ring first?" He opened the box and she hesitated and then said okay. A couple I was waiting on could not stop talking about it. They were both mortified for the guy. Then we all kind of wondered if they would actually get married or how long the marriage would last. Younger couple came in for what I can only assume was a first date. Ordered a pizza but never ate. Caught up in conversation I guess. Guy must have been feeling confident BC about 2 hours and he gets up. Goes to the bathroom. And then decides to sit next to her in the booth rather than across from her where he was before. I swear to you she then got up and used the restroom about 10 minutes later. And when she came back, decided it would best if they didn't sit next to each other and sat in his original place. Please refrain from doing this. IDK, but I'll find out Friday cause I work a freaking double. And it's Applebee's. My mom divorced my dad on Valentine's Day. A girl that I worked with went to lunch on Valentine's Day at an expensive restaurant her boyfriend had gotten a reservation for. She got dressed up nice, was going on about how sure she was that he was going to propose. He broke up with her. Not a waitress. But my family and I witnessed a couple argue with one another in a Carabas some years ago when Valentine's was on a weekend day. When the waiter asked for their order, the woman snaps at him, "Go away MF." The husband apologizes quickly and demanded that his wife apologize. But she refuses. The argument was over the wife's gambling debts or something of that nature. My father went over to them, yells at them for being idiotic and disturbing everyone else. Now, you do not want to irritate my father when he wants a nice dinner with his family. Needless to say, we heard the husband say, "I want a divorce." The wife again goes berserk and the husband pulls her outside and the argument continues. Once the wife is gone, the husband goes back in, apologizes to everyone and says that his wife is a lunatic and that they will separate. Although he wants a divorce because she is draining their bank account. Some people told him, "You deserve better." Some others pitched in for the bill and the waiter got a nice tip. It was the talk of the restaurant for quite some time.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.